Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Victory Life Legacy Spotlight. I have an all-time great with us today, an OG, old school heads. Hokie Nation will know him well. Before the DBU legacy really got going, you may not know, but he was part of that. I have with me Gene Bunn. How you doing, man?
Doing good. And you, Dwight?
I'm doing great, man. It's an honor to have you on, man. It's good. I feel like it's really important to highlight the legacies of those that came before us, especially when it comes to sports and a program like Virginia Tech. You really set the tone there, you and your guys there. Pre-Beamer, I think a lot of Tech fans think everything started with Frank Beamer, which, you know, I played for him, a great coach, great man, great person. But we're going to talk about your legacy and really before the Beamer days and what got going and some of the records you hold and some of the impacts you had. So before we get into your time in Blacksburg, let's talk about where you're from and when did you get into sports? When did you get into football?
I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Went to Kellam High School, and I'm actually the oldest of 5 boys. So growing up, sports, don't know why, but just came a big part of my life. And Little League, so to speak, you know, I played football, basketball, and baseball. And I actually grew up in Great Bridge, which is in Chesapeake, Virginia. And we had 2 championship Little League teams in football. And then we moved to Virginia Beach in the summer between 6th and 7th grade. So I'm so old, there was not middle school or junior high. You went to elementary school 1 through 7, straight to high school 8 through 12.
Yeah.
You talking about a culture shock. We had 3,500 kids in the high school 8 through 12.
Yeah. That's back in the day when high school was 8 through 12. I do remember that. I didn't go through that, but I remember when around the time when I was young, they started splitting it up with junior high, middle school, and whatnot. Hey, Gene, can you back up a little bit so our viewers can see your face? There you go, right there. That's perfect. Yeah, I want them to see the legend. Um, when you talk about Virginia Beach, I'm a Hampton guy. I was a Hampton Crabber, so I forgot that you are a 757 guy, and
Yep.
that's another plus. You know, and what people don't realize is we didn't call it the 757 back then because the area code down there was the 804.
Yep.
Matter of fact, most of Virginia was the 804. People don't realize that.
Yeah, they called it back in the day, they called it Tidewater.
Well, they still call it Tidewater. The old heads like me and you call it
Oh,
Tidewater.
yeah. But it's officially Hampton Roads.
Yeah, which has always been weird to me. Being from Hampton is cool, but you know, Chesapeake, Suffolk, all that, you know, it's I think it always flowed better when you call it Tidewater versus Hampton
I
Road.
agree.
So Great Bridge. You know, a lot of guys and ladies I have on my show, we talk about, especially the further you go back in the day, athletes tend to specialize right now, which is cool. You know, if you play baseball, it's year round. If you do football, you train year round. Um, but I know when I talk to my older guests, we talk about, you know, I played baseball, I played track, I ran track, excuse me, I played football. What other sports did you specialize when you got to high school in? What other sports did you play?
Well, when I got to high school in the 8th grade, my uncle, Jerry Matico, it was the first day of basketball tryouts after football season was over.
Hmm.
And I had somebody horse collar me around the neck and took me in the wrestling room. So I became a wrestler. So I wrestled, played baseball for 8th, 9th, and 10th grade,
Hmm.
wrestled all the way through and football all the way through, but I stopped playing baseball. And wrestling was a big part, in my opinion, that made me real tough on the football field. It was a heck of a sport, and we had a pretty good team. Uh, I graduated from Kellam in 1975. The fortunate thing for me, as I go back and look at uh, where I started and where I came from, is in the ninth grade, I have one record I know for sure at my high school that will never, ever be broken. And it's the player who put on the uniform, football uniform, the most ever. In the ninth grade, I was playing JV quarterback, and it was the head coach's first year as a head coach. And in preseason, we lost the first string quarterback to the season with an injury. In the second game, we lost the second string quarterback for the year with an injury. So the coach had, as he tells the story, he passed away a couple of years ago. As he tells the story, he called his old Great Bridge High School coach and said, you know, I got a question for you. I'm in a predicament. I can take this kid who's a tailback, and he's a good enough athlete to finish the year quarterback for us. Or I can bring up this 135-pound kid from the ninth grade and make him my starting quarterback, you know, for the future. And his old coach told him, you got nothing to prove. It's your first year as a head coach. Bring up the young kid and build for later. Well, during that season, I don't know why back then, but you were able to play JV on Thursday night, varsity on Friday night, and we actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, we had junior JV on Saturday morning.
No, I've never heard of junior JV in my life.
It was 1 year only, and it was the year that I was in the ninth grade. So I would suit up on Thursday night and start quarterback at JV, suit up Friday night and start quarterback for varsity. Then on Saturday morning, I'd suit up and start quarterback for the junior JV team. So I remember one day the old athletic director riding the bus, and he looks at me and he says, Bunn, getting tired yet? I said, Coach, I'm pretty tired. But it really worked out because being a freshman, and they had already won one game. I didn't get to play until the third game, and then we lost 7 straight. The school was opened in 1962, and it never had a winning season until my junior year. So we went 1-9 my freshman year. We went 3-7 my sophomore year, and then we were 9-1, 9-1.
Yeah.
We missed the playoffs my junior year, but it was a point rating system. And then my senior year, we actually went to the playoffs, and we got beat by Bethel in the first round, and they won the state championship that year.
Bethel did win the state championship that year. Yes.
Yep.
They sure did.
Mike Dunn was quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember him?
Yes. Well, I don't remember him, but I know about him.
Yeah. Kozlowski was the head coach.
Yeah, Coach Cos. He did coach the years I was at Hampton in the 90s. That's how long him and Coach Smith coached. As a matter of fact, Coach Smith still coaches at Hampton High.
No way.
No, he does. You sound like everybody. No way. Yeah, Coach Smith has been at Hampton High, and he's been coaching 40 plus years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter who made it to the playoffs from our side of the water, so to speak, is because we would play Hampton.
Yeah.
And then Hampton would beat us 40-10.
Yeah, Hampton is I mean, they're not the dominant program, but they still win. But from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the early 2000s, they were the premier program. And like you mentioned, I think they got over 15 state championships and some national championships. I do want to ask you though about, you know, your career in high school. I think it's always interesting when different people talk about their generation. Like, I know when I talk, I tell my son and daughters and even kids I've coached in football specifically how we had two-a-days, and it was for a month, and it was from ours was like 5:30 in the morning till 11 in the morning, and you came back around 2 or 3, and you went till 7 at night, and there was no heat index and cold orange, and you just practiced. You maybe had a couple of water breaks, and it sounds almost inhumane now, but I do like to hear the different comparisons. So if that was my time and how hard it was, I'm sure your time, your era was even harder, or just as tough. What do you remember about the preseason practices? You know, full gear, full, you know, shoulder pads, helmets, and everything. Was that the same thing for your team and your career?
Oh, it was vicious. I mean, not only in high school, but we had 3-a-days at
See?
Virginia Tech.
Well, no, at
And
Virginia Tech too.
yeah, when Bill Dooley came in, our first practice was before the sun came up in the wet grass with just your helmet. Then we'd have a practice in the afternoon. Then we'd have a practice in the evening.
Mm,
So when we first started with Dooley, that would be my senior year, 1978, it was 3 days. But back to high school, I was a country boy. There was only 6 high schools in Virginia Beach when I was playing. And being in the country, I had to establish, like my own workout routine,
mm.
in the summertime. And I would drive to what we call the city over to Plaza's Junior High. And one of our assistant coaches used to be like the rec guy. He was the recreation guy he opened it, but he couldn't have, by Virginia High School League rules, he couldn't conduct the practice, but I could. So we actually had summer practices that I ran. He was still watching, but I remember that we actually, as a team, moved on the Oceana base and lived in the barracks for a week.
Wow.
And we talk about 3-a-days, 4-a-days, all you can get in. It was brutal. My dad, who passed a few years ago, stepfather actually, but his family still owns Expert House Movers. I don't know if you know, about 35 years ago, when the Cape Hatteras lighthouses moved,
Mm,
my dad moved it.
wow.
So my dad loaded up the 7-man sled and the 2-man sled on a lowboy and took it over to the base. So we had the blocking sleds and everything, and we slept in the barracks for a week. And that was brutal. In high school, we didn't have but so many kids on the team, so there wasn't a big cut. You had to quit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had, like, my senior year, 33 guys that dressed out.
33.
Yeah.
And I take it like my time, you guys also, your best players went both ways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
My senior year, believe this or not, we had 7 kids go both ways and nobody got hurt. And all 7 got full rides to D1 colleges.
Hmm.
2 of us went to Virginia Tech. Danny Hill went to Virginia Tech with me. Danny started 4 years at nose guard for Virginia Tech.
Mm.
Now, he and I were separated a year. He had to go to Massanutten. I still have my senior year yearbook, and he signed it, "See you at Tech," TEACH. He had to pull a year in Massanutten to get his grades up. But I tell you what he did. He went from 270, and he was basketball quick. He went from 270 to 225.
Really?
At 1 year, because he didn't like the food at Massanutten. And he literally started 44 games in a row for us, Tech, at nose guard.
Mm.
He was a beast.
Yeah.
He was a player.
Man.
But we had 2 kids go to Tech. One went to South Carolina. One went to East Carolina. 2 went to Norfolk State. And 1 went to Virginia Union.
That's
So
awesome.
7 kids off of 1 team.
That's amazing. But that's a tribute to the work you guys put in and the work ethic that was present within your program. Well, let's talk
Yep.
about you talk about the D1s and 7 guys went D1. Um, when you were in high school, when you were in high school, and you went to Virginia Tech, were there other schools involved in your recruitment? Now that Tidewater, also known as Hampton Roads area, is no longer the best known secret. It is Ohio States are down there, the Penn States, Syracuse, even teams from the West Coast, Oregon, USC. During your time and my time to follow, it was still up and coming. Now it's still a hotbed of talent like the Florida, California, and Texas. Were there other schools on you besides the Hokies?
I want to say about 10, but nothing out of the region.
Okay. Okay.
I'm talking Bill Dooley at UNC.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Holtz was at NC State. Pat Dye was at East Carolina. Sonny Randall was at UVA.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Tate was at University of Richmond. I think Coach Thalman was at VMI. And so I took a visit to all those schools. One of the interesting visits was NC State. Coach Holtz, on Sunday morning, we lined up outside of his office, and he would call us in one at a time. And so it was my time, and I come in, I sat down, and he starts talking about, playing for NC State, et cetera. And I kind of interrupted him and said, well, Coach, I'm not finished with my recruiting yet, and I haven't visited all my schools. And I don't know if you remember the old-timey speaker phones. It was about this big, and you had to push a button. And during the middle of me talking, he pushed the button, he goes, send the next one in.
Oh, yeah. I do remember those.
Right in the middle of it, he's like, you ain't coming to the state, we're done.
He said it just like that? It was cutthroat.
Oh, send the next one in. Stood up, shook my hand, and that was it.
Oh, man. So NC State was out the picture. Anybody else?
No, for some reason, I just really, Coach Terry Don Phillips, who signed me and Danny to go to Tech, he had done a great job of recruiting. And there was something about, I grew up on 10 acres out in the country.
Mm.
And so I wasn't going to UVA, the preppy school. I can tell you that right now. Now, Carolina, they didn't recruit me hard. Coach Phillips put a good effort in there. And I'll never forget, one day at practice, Danny Hill, his nickname was Sad Man because he didn't talk. He didn't talk to anybody, but he talked to me. So one day in high school, about the 5th game of the season, we're walking off the practice field, and he says, you got a minute? I need to talk to you. I said, sure. And he was getting recruited heavier than me.
Mm.
He actually, was getting letters and phone calls from Alabama, Auburn, some of the big boys. At 270 and basketball quick, there you go. And he told me after practice that day, he said, man, I can't stand it. He said, they're sending me letters. They're calling my house. They're showing up my front door. He said, where are you going? I said, well, you and I haven't visited Tech yet, but if I got to say, today I'm going to Virginia Tech. And he said, well, I'm going wherever you're going because I know you'll look out for me.
That's awesome.
So when I got home, I called Coach Phillips. They had a plane pick us up the next night.
The next night?
Oh, yeah. He wasn't missing out on this chance because everybody was recruiting Danny Hill.
Yeah.
Gene Bunn was getting recruited, but not like Danny Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Coach, I just want to let you know, Danny Hill told me today, wherever I go, he's going. Let me call you back tomorrow. So he had a plane come down, pick us up. Danny spent the night in my house, and it was a little 4-seater. My dad was in the front seat with the pilot, and Danny and I were in the back. He spent the night at my house, and it was after a game. And my mom used to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. I'm talking about real stuff.
Good cooked meal, home cooked meal.
Oh, yeah. And she cooked us a big big breakfast, and we took off. I never saw the ground again until we touched it in Blacksburg. It was that foggy and cloudy. And we no more take off, and Danny throws up everywhere.
What?
Yeah. It was the worst stench all the way to Blacksburg. I'll never forget it. But we go to Tech, and I said, I'm in, I'm done. So National Signing Day, well, back then, like the second Tuesday of February, Coach Phillips was at my house, and Danny and I signed that night to go to Virginia Tech. And Coach Phillips is an interesting story because I have still stayed in touch with him since 1975.
Yeah. Before you talk about your time at Tech and Coach Phillips and who you played with and everything like that, I know Virginia Tech, obviously, like all universities, has expanded and grown. You know, it's almost 70,000 people at games. They got that entrance, and you know, it has grown because of guys like yourself and the guys like myself that followed that helped build the program, the legacy, the dynasty, and the brotherhood. But what was the campus like back then? What sold you on going there? I know you mentioned being a country boy and being a proud Virginian, but what sold you on that campus, or was it just the fact that you wanted to stay in state?
Well, the campus, I think we had about 20,000 kids at that time. And we were in Hillcrest. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hillcrest.
Yeah, I know Hillcrest.
Okay. And that was the athletic dorm, predominantly football players, and then other sports if you're on scholarship. And then if there were any rooms left, if you weren't on scholarship, you could come over there. But the greatest thing about Hillcrest was we had our own dining hall. And they used to open up the dining hall every night at 10 o'clock. And you can make bologna sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, and get something to drink. So it was pretty cool. But the big thing about me was in high school, I played quarterback, running back, and defensive back. And Coach Phillips said, you can play any position you want. We just want you to come to Tech. You're a good kid. You know, we'll put you somewhere. So I really wanted to play defensive back. I was more of a quarterback because I was a leader, and we had some boys to play tailback. There's no doubt. As a matter of fact, 2 of those 3 were the 7 scholarship guys. One went to state and one went to Virginia Union. But at Tech, the situation was they had 3 seniors in the secondary. They had Chuck Purdue at free safety, and then at each corner they had Billy Hardee and Flash Davis. And I don't know if you heard of Billy Hardee.
Yes, I have.
Okay, God rest his soul, he passed away. However, Billy and Flash, woo, them boys, they were real corners. So I looked at it this way: if I go to Tech and do not play any varsity as a freshman, which I didn't, come spring practice, there are 3 spots open. And that's what sold me on the opportunity to play the fastest, because the other schools, you know, we want you here, we want you here. Coach Phillips said, you can play anywhere you want. And the fact that Billy Hardee and them, Flash and Chuck Purdue were seniors, I didn't play as a freshman. Do you know who my freshman coach, JV coach was?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians?
Yeah.
Bruce Arians was your coach.
It was his first year as a GA at Virginia Tech.
I'm a big Bruce Arians fan, even if he wasn't a Hokie. He is a great coach, and he's got a great,
no doubt.
He's got a great player in Tom Brady. And man, that's crazy how things can work out like that.
He played quarterback at Tech.
Yeah, I know about Bruce Arians playing. Yeah.
So he finished in 74. I got there in 75, and he was the GA coach. And he was physically the head coach of the, I guess you call it the freshman team.
Yeah.
well, the JV team,
Mm-hmm.
and him and Joe White was coached the JV team. So I played 6 games JV as a freshman in 1975. Then when Billy and Flash left, come spring practice, I moved up. I was actually number 7 right corner when I saw the depth chart for the first time that I was there my freshman year when I first got to Tech.
Mm.
And I moved up from number 7 corner to starting corner by the end of spring practice in 1976.
Man. So when you talk about all those players you played with, because again, for people that's going to watch this interview, they're going to realize, man, you know, the people that know you and know your career, they knew about those names and the players you play with. But talk about the transition from high school to college. You mentioned playing with some absolute beasts and some guys that came in with you. Who else was on that team? And was it a very difficult transition coming from the 757 to Virginia Tech? You know, a lot of guys I talk to, they talk about how, man, I wasn't ready. I know me personally, I had the size, I had the maturity, but physically I was not ready because it's a grown man sport. You realize that very quickly when you get to college. How was that like for you?
Well, I, I've always been, in my opinion, I've always been blessed by God
Mm-hmm.
my entire life. Believe this or not, 2 years of Little League football, undefeated in Great Bridge, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 4 years at Tech. I never missed a game.
Wow.
Needless to say, I was beat up. You know what the term of beat up is.
Yeah.
But I never had like a knee injury or shoulder injury, that took me out.
Mm-hmm.
So I played all the games. Number 2, you would be talking to me today if it wasn't for my personal defensive back coach. That guy was ahead of his time. He was an absolute genius at intercepting the football. Now, let me explain it. In spring of 76, spring is, as you know, is when the walk-ons
Yeah.
you get invited.
Mm-hmm.
We had 26 defensive backs when spring practice started. Now, we had 2 weeks of running in the field house, the old field house, and then we had 4 weeks of live contact. The first day I went in the field house, I'm with a kid named Stedman. He's a year ahead of me. And we're walking in the door, and I see about 35 55-gallon trash cans. Now, I see the orange cones. They're all laid out, but I'm like, I look at him and I said, what are the trash cans for? And he laughed and took off. They were puke buckets.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I had no idea. Do not puke on the carpet.
Yes. Yes.
So we went 2 weeks indoor running, 4 weeks of live contact. And I'm telling you, my coaches, Jimmy Sharpe was the head coach. Danny Ford was the O coordinator. Charlie Pell was the D coordinator. I mean, all these guys that played for Bear at Alabama. And they didn't play around. In spring practice, nobody wore a different colored jersey. Everybody was live, even the quarterbacks.
Mm.
So they wanted to see who wanted to play. Now, I'm going to back up 1 second because I have to tell a story that a lot of people don't know. In 1974 was Jimmy Sharpe's first year. And I named some of the coaches. I didn't name Perry Willis, Jack White, Stokely, all these guys that played in college, predominantly Alabama, and played for the Bear.
Mm.
So when they got hired, everybody, now I was at high school, but when they got hired, all the kids on the Tech football program at that point was home for Christmas. So when they came back, the first coaching meeting, they met the new head coach, Jimmy Sharpe. And they said, our philosophy is we're bored outside, And the board has everything on it about team meetings. If you need to meet with the academic advisor, it'll be on there, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So when we finish introducing the coaches, you can walk by the board and see tomorrow's practice schedule. Well, 74, I wasn't there. I'm just telling you the story.
Yeah.
They show up at the board, some of the players, and they're like, practice tomorrow, form a line, and pair up based on position, and form the line in front of the wrestling room. So nobody knew what the hell was going on. So they formed a line, paired up based on position, and Danny Ford was there, and there was about an 18-inch stick. It was circular, about 2 inches round. And he's talking, and the line went way up. He said, the rest of y'all in the far back, you'll know by the time you get up here. So he said, I'm going to walk in the wrestling room. Jones, Smith, each of you get one hand on the stick. You're going to be in the middle of the wrestling room. I'm going to back out, cut the lights off, blow the whistle, and the man who comes out with the stick is still on the team.
What?
You think I'm kidding? They told me there was kids in line who were on scholarship who didn't come out with a stick that was crying because they thought they were cut. That was the first practice.
That is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about old school methods. If you did that now,
my gosh,
you would be an ESPN documentary. You would be on Twitter. Everybody would talk. You would be in Newsweek, Sports Illustrated as the worst coach ever. You'd be under investigation. But, I love stories like that. I think, and obviously, they have to be more safe with football. But I think to some degree, that's what's going on across the country as far as, I don't want to say we're soft now, but it's just more so everything is to make sure everybody feels okay. And I think there's something to be said about being tough and earning and fighting for something and not knowing what you're doing and meaning not knowing, okay, if I do this, I get this. Right. Just going through it because that's what you've been told. That's the process. I actually admire that, even though I probably would have been scared to death in that line. But I would have, you know what? I would have fought for that stick, man.
Oh, there's no doubt.
I would have, hey, let's go. We got to do what we got to do.
I can tell you right now, just like you, I'm coming out with the stick.
Yeah. I like that. I'm thinking here, man, should I try that with some of the guys I coach? Oh, I said no, because all of a sudden I would be that guy on the news. Why in the world would he do that?
Let me finish now. So
no, go ahead.
In spring practice, we start with 26 DBs.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks of running, we lost a few guys.
Mm-hmm.
4 weeks of live contact, and then the spring game. So 26, move ahead 6 weeks, we had 7 guys left in the secondary, and I was one of the 7. That's when I made the team. We had a coach, like I said, about me being blessed by God. We had a coach that fit my bill. He wanted to run you off. There is no doubt. You can ask anybody that played on the team, not just in the secondary, but Jimmy Sharpe used to have to come up to our area of practice, the head coach, and tell him to stop because he was doing crazy stuff. He would, as you're sitting on stretching before practice starts, as you're on the ground stretching, sitting on your butt, he would pick one person each day, and he would come up right by your ear hole on the helmet and say, son, today is your day. I'm going to send you home to your mama. And he would ride you all day long. So fortunately for me, I had an uncle who was a SEAL, and I had been through some stuff with him already. So I was kind of prepared. You're not going to run me off. Whatever you got for me, I'm not going home. My dad was 16 years old, He was cutting firewood with a chainsaw in the middle of 200 acres that they still own, way out in Virginia Beach in the country. He's 16 years old, and the old-timey chainsaw, the blade kept running when it was on neutral, or you didn't have the gas going. And he grabbed a piece of wood, and his elbow hit the back of the chainsaw, and it cut his jaw in half. Cut out his 4 bottom teeth. 16 years old, he grabbed a t-shirt, held it together, got his keys, drove 45 minutes to the hospital. 6 hours later, 254 stitches, he drove himself home. And I'm gonna run home and I'm gonna go home and face my father and say, it was too tough. I don't think so.
Nah, not after hearing that story. Yeah.
So the fortunate thing for Gene Bunn is now I've got a coach who understands that he's not going to run me off, make me a football player.
Yes, sir.
And the first day of spring practice, I'll tell you why he was a genius in my mind. The first day of spring practice, he had the trainers, and he had a stick that he had one of the trainers put in the ground in the middle of the field, and then he pulled the measuring tape where the receiver, this is where the quarterback's going to throw the ball, this is where the receiver's going to catch the ball at a 10-yard out. And it was, he adjusted them a little bit, it was 40 yards. He said, now fellas, your average Division I quarterback today, when he throws the ball, it's going to travel 10 yards per second. So what I need you to do is when you do your back pedal and you read the quarterback, we played zone. We didn't play any man-to-man. So when you read the quarterback and the receiver and he cuts that out, you can't be more than 4 steps up, hopefully closer, and you are never, never, ever to tackle the receiver. We had zone, so the safety over the top head deep. So when he cut, if you're 3 yards, 1, 2, 3, boom. If you touched the receiver in practice, you would run until the sun came up the next morning.
If you touched him?
If you touched him. He drilled into the corners that's not your man deep. Your job is to intercept the football. Don't break it up. Don't have him not catch it. You are to intercept the football. Do you know he coached 1 year at Tennessee? I didn't find this out until my Hall of Fame induction. He and his wife made a 20-hour round trip from Georgia to be at my Hall of Fame induction in 2010. And I didn't know this, but he told me, and I went and looked it up. And it's true. In Division I football today, single digits will lead the country in interceptions. If you've got 10 or 11, you're definitely leading the country.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And in 1970, I believe, he was the DB coach the first year. Bill Battle was a new head coach and hired him as the secondary coach. And in that season, which is still a record today, a team record of 36 interceptions. One night, Alabama came to play them, 8 o'clock kickoff. They intercepted Alabama 7 times in one game. And he had one kid that had 11 and one kid that had 10. So to me, I got it. I don't know why the other kids didn't get it. So he taught me how to intercept the football, and all my records are interception related. Yeah. It's sure not 40 related, because my 40 time was 4.7 downhill with the wind behind me. But I'd hit you now. I would hit you.
Yeah, Gene, let's talk about though. Before I want to touch on your records, which I don't think many Tech fans or even people that follow college football know this. But before we talk about your records, Virginia Tech obviously wasn't in the Big East, the conference I played in, or the ACC, which they're currently in. They were independent. And what people don't realize, and I remember when I was being recruited by Tech, we were in the Big East, but I did my research and I saw the schedule that they would play, and it was a gauntlet. I'm talking about
I have
like,
it.
yeah. So who did y'all play back then? What do you remember? Tell everybody the teams y'all played. You can pick a season or just summarize some of the games and teams you guys played, because to be an independent, and there were more independents back then. Now there's 9,000, I'm being facetious, but there are a bunch of conferences. But I mean,
Right.
back then, I mean, even in the 90s, Tech was playing Florida State, Oklahoma. But let's talk about your era. Who did y'all play?
Well, here we were in 1978, Bill Dooley's first year. We were 4-7, and in a row, 3 weeks in a row, we played Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida State. We got beat by Alabama 35-0, Kentucky 28-0, and Florida State 24-14.
Hmm.
But we played Clemson. We played West Virginia. That was a big rivalry back then.
West Virginia?
Yeah.
Well, it was when I played too, especially we were conference foes and the proximity of schools.
Right.
But unfortunately, they don't play every year anymore. But yeah, West Virginia was tough. They reminded me a lot of us.
Right. Exactly. We played Texas A&M. We played Auburn. I mean, Tulsa. And then you got Richmond, William and Mary, VMI. But I mean, our schedule was a beast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to some degree, with conference realignment, the growth of college football, I think this is not just for Tech. I think it's for a lot of programs. Um, it's just different now. I mean, it's tough to get a great schedule. It's tough to get um, those kind of matchups. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the you're not supposed to lose like to Richmond or VMI. UVA again was our big game. My 3 years, we won one, we lost one, we tied one against UVA.
Really?
Yep.
Who did UVA have back then?
Um, Sonny Randall was the head coach.
Hmm.
I don't even remember any of their players. No, I really don't. But playing them, was a big deal back then. Even it's bigger today, but it was a big deal back then.
Hmm. Hmm. So now in college, you played a lot of positions in high school. In college, you talked about playing defensive back. Um, who were some of the receivers, or who was some? You mentioned Oklahoma, Alabama. I mean, it's tough because when you play at that level, you play against everyone's good. I don't think everyone understands that everyone's good, but highlight some of the guys that you remember going against. I know you guys played zone, but you're still competing on the field against receivers and tight ends. Was there somebody, a future pro that you played against, or some guys? I know Alabama had some dogs. Who do you remember saying, "I got to lace them up tight today. I got to get right"? Who was some of those guys?
Clemson had Fuller at quarterback and Jerry Butler at wide receiver.
Mm,
So Fuller at quarterback ended up playing for the Bears. He was a backup, but Jerry Butler was like a first or second round pick in the NFL, I think, to Buffalo.
mm.
But he was an absolute player. They Clemson had Dwight Clark, who caught the pass, the catch.
The pass, the catch, yes.
Yep. Um, Texas A&M, I don't remember any receivers, but they had Curtis Dickey at running back. They had Tony Franklin, the barefooted kicker. And in the secondary, they had Lester Hayes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we played them in the second Saturday in '76 at College Station, and at kickoff at 1 o'clock, it was 114 degrees.
Yeah, it was this at Clemson.
No, this is at Texas A&M
I mean
and
Texas
college.
A&M. You know, Clemson and Texas A&M. I didn't play at Texas A&M. I played at Clemson, but both stadiums, it always felt like it was always extreme heat and temperature. It always felt like the sun was behind the bench. I mean, it was just so hot. Texas A&M, Tech played them back in 2008, I believe, whatever. Actually, went in there and was the first non-conference team to win there in like 12 years. So Texas A&M back then, when they were a very, very tough team to beat on the road, the 12th man, as they called it, tough place to
Yep.
play. And a lot like Tech has that whole core cadet thing going. Gene, make sure, you step back because I want everybody to see your face and hear this record. I'm not going to attempt to explain this record, but you have a remarkable record that still stands today. Just repeat as we talked and prepping for this interview what this record is, because Virginia Tech has been known for almost 30 years now for, they call it DBU, them, LSU, Ohio State. There's an ongoing debate. I don't really get into all of that because it is what it is. It's opinionated. You know, I just want to say at the end of the day, your record is very impressive. Let's talk about the interception record and other records you have.
Well, again, I want to preference the records that if it wasn't for Coach Bennett, Buddy Bennett, my secondary coach, who taught me everything, how to intercept the football, I wouldn't have anything. If I went to State or Carolina or UVA, I don't have these records. But I was the first player in Tech football history to lead the secondary in interceptions for 3 consecutive years. There's been one player to match that since, and that's Tyrone Drake. I think Drake played about 10 years in the NFL.
Yeah, 49ers and a few other teams. Saints, I believe. Yeah, Drakeford was a beast. I've interviewed him, not on a legacy spotlight, but when I do a column. Drakeford was an amazing player at Tech. Played with Russell and played for Almation, Coach Almation.
Phil
Almation, yeah.
Yep.
But so your record and how many interceptions was it? The total.
Well, I had 7, 6, and 5. So I led the team those 3 years in interceptions. And the other records are I intercepted 1 or more passes in 5 consecutive games and 6 consecutive games. So second place is 4 by default. So nobody's gotten to 5 or 6 in a row. I had, I'm the only player in Tech football history to intercept 5 or more passes in 3 consecutive seasons and 6 or more passes in 2 consecutive seasons. I got the highest percentage of interceptions over 30 games played, which is 0.0. I average 0.055 interceptions per game, so a half a pick per game. And I had 18 interceptions in 33 games in an era where they did not throw the football.
I was getting ready to say, it wasn't like the spread and what we see now in the Big 12 or, you know, even at Virginia Tech and other schools when they're going 3 or 4 wides, empty backfield. That is impressive, especially since the fact that they've been passing more the last 20 years. Every year it seems like they pass more. And the legacy of DBs that have been at Virginia Tech. I mean, that's a remarkable record. When I read that and then I did my research and then you told me as we prepped for this, I was floored because I should know that. I knew who you were, but I didn't really do my research until you put that out there. And that is remarkable, very remarkable.
Well, here's, in my opinion, there should be an asterisk. I thought somebody, you know, I came in there 10 years before me, Ron Davidson had the career interception record at 13. So my first 2 seasons, I tied him. And then I had 5 my senior year. So I thought in 10 years, somebody would break my record. I had no idea that it'd still be around 42 years later.
Yeah.
So the most interesting thing, though, if you look, Drakeford's number 2 with 16. I
Mhm.
think Powell is number 3. He had 15, and number 4 had 14. But all 3 of those guys played 4 seasons, and I
Mhm.
only played 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got a call this summer from the SID office. They were going over some stats and stuff, and they said they had researched and found out that in 33 games, that's the disclaimer, there's only 7 former D1 players and Division I football history that have more than 18 interceptions that played in 33 games.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable that record, and unbelievable they can do that research. I don't know how people find those stat people are impressive, because
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to even research that. Which again is a tribute to the man and player you were. I do want to ask you, I do have a few more questions, Gene, because this has been a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying this because this is educational for me, especially when you talk. I'm never going to forget that stick story. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Once
but
told, you won't forget it.
yeah, I can't wait to tell my son and some of my friends about that. I really can't. That is great, and I have it on video, so when I run this interview, it's going to be great. But a lot has been said about, and this happens at all programs. Coaching changes. Now we have Coach Fuente there. Bud Foster, the great Bud Foster, retired. Virginia Tech under the Beamer era was known for consistency, and all the coaches pretty much stayed. Very few left. But people forget about your era to some degree, and it's not right, but that's just how it is. They're going to forget about certain players. Um, Talk about the fact that Beamer came in and did what he did. Did you? I mean, obviously you followed it, but what were your thoughts about when Beamer came in after your era and took the program to new heights and bowl games and playing for a national championship and ACC conference championships, Big East championships? Do you feel like you guys helped start that? And were you proud? Were you a proud Hokie? I mean, what were your thoughts about all of that?
Oh, I got cold chills
Mm-hmm.
just you asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bleed maroon and orange. It doesn't matter, if we have an okay season, I'm still there.
Mm-hmm.
They make a bumper sticker. Shit happens. So, it's just like Frank had that one bad year. What was he? 2-8-1 or
When he
something like.
first, yeah, it was his 4th year. I remember that. I was in high school. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it's just like, to keep him, whoever made the decisions to give him that chance, it just goes to show, what if they were to fire him? Well, I personally don't think we go to the national championship game in what, 99,
99,
2000?
99, 99.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of that era, I have a great story that is a recruiting story, because rumor has it, and you're from that area.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor has it Michael Vick wasn't the best quarterback when he was coming out of that side of the water.
Well, rumor, I can speak on it. Mike is obviously, we're cousins, him and Marcus, and I'm from Hampton. I recruited Mike, and the irony in all of that is Ronald Curry, who you're referring to, played for my high school. So I
All
had
right.
I had relationships with both. Ronald was LeBron James before LeBron James. He's the only player I believe, and I don't want to misquote here, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, to be National Gatorade Player of the Year in both football and basketball. He won 3 straight state championships in football. He won one in basketball, won 2 national championships in football. One season he was responsible for 79 touchdowns.
Oh my
So
gosh.
Ronald Curry was special, and he was also a McDonald's All-American in basketball. He was the MVP of the McDonald's All-American game. He also won the dunk contest. But here on the other side of town, on the other city, Newport News, right beside Hampton, I started off growing up in Newport News, and I moved to Hampton, was my cuz doing this thing and playing for the great coach Tommy Riemann, but
Yeah.
with with Beamer, I remember because I was at Tech telling everybody, hey, man, my teammates, I said, y'all, I was talking about Ronald Curry, but I was like, we got a guy that I think we can get. I'm recruiting him. My cousin is going to come here and he's going to take us to another level. And because the internet wasn't really out like that yet, and we didn't have all these recruiting services, Mike, people don't realize Mike was rated top 5, top 7, depending on what publication in the nation. But he wasn't recognized because in a lot of ways he was overshadowed because Ronald Curry was a phenom. Bobby Bowden at Florida State called him the best high school football player he had ever seen. So in a lot of ways, man, Mike was the best kept secret. And I'm glad Virginia Tech put all the eggs in the Mike Vick basket because Ronald at the time, I thought he was going to UVA, but then, North Carolina, the appeal of playing for Mac Brown and Dean Smith was tough to overcome. And he didn't go to UVA. He went to Carolina. But I always said I wanted Ron to go to UVA for personal reasons. I'm a proud Virginian like you. And I felt that if Ronald had gone to Virginia and Mike had gone to Tech, that would have elevated both programs.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've always been envious of the Alabama, Auburn, and Michigan and Ohio State rivalry. I feel like, and I love the fact that we beat UVA, but I always enjoyed it during my time when we played UVA. Both teams were ranked and it meant something. I think, when your rival is terrible or struggling, it takes away from it. But no, that's not a rumor. That's not a rumor. I mean, I lived through it. I was part of it. And I'm really glad Virginia Tech got Mike. I'm glad they knew that they didn't need to waste time recruiting Ronald because it was just everybody wanted him in both sports. I can't imagine every school in the country in 2 sports wanting me. And then he also got looked at baseball. I think he got drafted in baseball. But, yeah, we got Mike.
You're going to love this. And you can confirm this with Billy Height. So Billy Height, speaking of Ronald Curry, you couldn't have preferenced my statement anymore. So Billy Height and Coach Beamer are in Mike Vick's house. And they're trying to get him to commit, sign the dotted line. And Mike Vick says, Coach, I'll sign that today if you tell me that you're going to stop recruiting Ronald Curry. And Coach Beamer replied, and Billy says he's under the table, he's trying to step on his foot, get him to say the right thing. And Beamer says, well, Mike, I can't do that. We're going to recruit Curry, but we'd love to have you. So Height, telling the story, says they both go out to the car, and when they get into the car, he turns to Beamer and he goes, are you effing crazy? Get back in that house right now and tell them, man, you're not going to recruit Ronald Curry. And Beamer's like, you think so? He goes, yes. That's how we got Michael Vick.
Well, yeah. No, I don't know about that story, but I mean, Height recruited me, and Height's my man. Coach Height I'm referring to, Coach Billy Height, the great Coach Billy Height. I'm going to ask him about it. And you know what? That doesn't surprise me because Height and Beamer, we all know they were tight. And Billy Height was his right-hand man. And, Billy Height recruited that area before going back to the DeMatha, Maryland area. And he knew. And I think if you played like he did, like yourself and Beamer, when you see a play. I tell my son all the time, my daughters, when I see something, I can take within 2 minutes and know if a player's got it. And if you saw Mike over at Warwick High School, if you just saw half of a game, you knew he was special. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, I don't think Beamer or Coach Billy Height or anybody in the world thought he was going to be that special.
Right.
But that sounds like Billy Height, man. And I think the fact that they did invest in him and guys like myself and so many players is why during their era they were so great and they had a great run. But anyway, I wanted to, let's talk about real quick. You had your great run at Tech. You have the records. You had a brotherhood like I did. That's the beauty of playing collegiate sports. what happens next? Do you get a free agent deal, drafted, or do you just go into the workforce? What happens for you after your time is up in Blacksburg?
In 78, Dooley's first year, so I got the opportunity to play for Jimmy Sharpe. 1 year for Bill Dooley. Dooley had the 10. Frank had the 29. So there hadn't been many coaches to coach at Tech because of Frank taking up 29 years. But in 78, I got invited to the Blue-Gray All-Star game. And the day that we were supposed to run the 40 and do all the stuff outside for the scouts, it rained like cats and dogs. So we went inside and we didn't run the 40. They just asked you what your 40 time was.
Hold on, pause. What? They just asked?
Yep. Now they preference that you're going to have to run it if we invite you to camp. So be somewhere close. So I was as honest could be. I said 4.7 downhill with the wind behind me. And they were like, but it says you're a cornerback. I'm like, yeah. So anyway, I didn't have many NFL scouts the week prior to the game. But in the game, we had an onside kick. We kicked off. I recovered it. I had a 63-yard punt return. And we were winning 28-24 with about a minute and a half to go. I think the quarterback was from Michigan State. And they were driving. They were about to 30. And I intercepted the last pass of the game to secure the victory for us. So after the game, I had all these pro scouts, all of a sudden wanted to talk to me. And back then, there was I call it a two-tier free agent deal. I wasn't considered a draft choice. And 3 teams, the Buccaneers, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New England Patriots, talked to me about like a walk-on, a free agent walk-on. But the 2 tiers, I call it, is one, they would pay, for you to get there, hotel and everything, as long as you kept making the cuts. The second tier was you had to pay your way and your hotel and everything while you were there. And so I basically got a 2-tier from all 3. And the USFL was coming out the next year.
Oh, yeah.
So I stayed in shape and went out for, I think it was the Washington Generals.
Yep. No, well, I want to say Senators, but I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah.
There was a team in Washington.
Yeah. I know, I remember that. I just can't remember the name, so I apologize.
And I made it to the last cut of that team. And then I went to workforce because I had watched guys at Virginia Tech while I was there. I had watched guys go to the NFL, get cut, come back, work out all off season, go back to the NFL, get cut, come back, And I said, it's just not in the cards.
Yeah, but you know what? What's remarkable is you still had a great career. And I think that's what I tell young men now, and even young women, if you're able to get a scholarship or it be a walk-on and make the team and earn a scholarship later and play and contribute or start and have meaningful plays and snaps and be part of something, even if it's a losing season, you still surpass the odds of many kids you went to junior high school and middle school with. Very few people play sports at the collegiate level.
Yep.
Very few people play college ball, and that's the same thing that happened with me. I remember went to the Baltimore Ravens mini camp, got released, tried out, worked out, and you find yourself in a cycle, and you're getting actually further and further behind in the next transitional piece of your life when you're supposed to go into the workforce. So for you, you decided, you know what, I had a great run, and you went into the workforce. What are you doing now? And do you still go up to Tech for games?
Yes, I didn't go during the stretch of, I think, 2005 to 2010. My son was playing, and he played at Catawba College, D2. He was 5'11", 165, could run. Yeah, the definition of run is he ran the anchor on the 4x100 of our track high school team. So he could run. Not dad couldn't, but son could. He must have got that from mom. So he actually, believe it or not, Dwight, he in his career at Catawba, he had 120 career catches, 30 were for touchdowns.
Hmm.
One out of every 4 was a touchdown.
That's awesome, man.
So he still holds the all-time career touchdown reception record at Catawba.
Hmm.
And I still have the all-time career interception record at Tech.
That's such a blessing, man.
So you can only imagine how Thanksgiving and Christmas is. Dad, you'd never been able to cover me. Son, your ass would have never got off the line of scrimmage. We could hit you in my day.
I love those talks. That's the blessing of having a child, especially a son, when y'all play the same sport. I know the trash talk is real. That's awesome, man.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Gene, this has been a lot of fun, as I mentioned earlier, man. I love these legacy spotlights because I meet great people like yourself. I get a chance to highlight a remarkable legacy, man, that many people like myself appreciate. And I'm sure people that follow your career, when they see this interview, are going to be very pleased and very happy to reminisce and reflect. This is the part of my show where I wrap up and I let my guest share his final thoughts about, or her thoughts about, what their career taught them, life lessons. What did the game teach you? What are you doing now as far as giving back? And what do you appreciate about all the life lessons you learned, the mistakes you made, or the adversity you faced, and how you overcame that? And what would you tell people going through the same thing, young athletes, men and women? What would you tell them to keep them on track and to inspire them?
Well, first of all, personally, me, I learned more on that football field, and I mean the practice field. I don't mean the game field.
Mm-hmm.
I learned more on that practice field than I did in any classroom because I learned who I was. I learned that there was, as Coach used to say, there was another gear. I didn't think I had that gear. Coach showed me I had that gear.
Mm-hmm.
So the confidence that was instilled in me from playing football has carried throughout my entire life. I'm as competitive gets. And I can tell you that came from the football field. I'm not disrespecting the professors at Tech.
No doubt.
I'm just saying that, you know, I have a diploma. I promised my mother that I'd graduate, being the oldest of 5 boys. And the 4 brothers followed suit. All 4 of them got full rides.
Awesome.
2 of them football and 2 of them wrestling.
Mm.
But the atmosphere of the guys that you played with and the friends that I have now, they're all over the country, California, Texas, Florida, you know, this Facebook stuff, what little bit I know how to do, I can at least, you know, send a message and talk to them. So I tell people that when I went to Tech, there were no cell phones, no computers, and I think there were still 2 dinosaurs. So some kids that 16 today look at me like, I said, do you know what a dinosaur is? But I couldn't thank Jimmy Sharpe enough. I still talk to him. He's in Destin, Florida, doing well. And everything about it. You know, we didn't win. In 3 years, our record was 13, 19, and 1. And once again, we were independent. We were not in a conference. But from the fact of, I have fond memories. I don't think about the 19 we lost.
Mm-hmm.
I've got fond memories of that practice field, the guys I played with, and the things that the coaches, more than just my DB coach, taught me has carried on with me throughout life.
That's awesome.
And I would tell any kid, male or female, any sport, if they have the opportunity to go to the next level, take it.
Yeah, well said and very true. And I appreciate you jumping on today. This has been a lot of fun. And that last answer was very true. And I'm definitely going to show others this. And I appreciate you for sharing your insight, going down memory lane, talking about your legacy, an impactful legacy. That Coach Hike story is classic. I can't wait to.
Call him up. Call because
Oh no, he's going to see this interview. He's going to see this interview. He's going to see this. I'm gonna tag him in it on Facebook, and he's going to see this interview, man. And it's cool. And again, I'm glad you reminded me. You also a Tywater guy. This makes it even special, man. But with that being said, to all my viewers that check for our legacy spotlight and support Victory Life, I say thank you. And thank you again, Gene, for jumping on. I want to remind everybody, like I say, every episode, make sure whatever you do, no matter where you go, make sure you have a positive impact and you leave a great legacy. Thank you.
And I'm going to leave today as the king of DBU.
Oh, okay, let's go. All right, thank you.
The 18 picks are still there.
All right, thank you, Gene.
All right, have a good day.
You too.